Welcome to Freedom Window. Today I'm going to do my Senate projection. Actually, I've already done it and I tweeted it out, but I haven't had a chance to do the video, so now I'm going to do the video. Before I do that, I just want to encourage you to like this video, share it with a friend or maybe someone in your family, subscribe to the channel. It all helps. Okay, let's take a look. I filled out the states where we don't really have to be concerned, with making a call. There are a few states here I'm going to get out of the way very quickly that I don't believe were ever in doubt. That's why I didn't even keep averages on them. So let's look at that. First one, Real Clear Politics average for John Cornyn's seat in Texas. He's got a lead in Emerson, UMass Lowell, New York Times, Siena by 10, and Quinnipiac. I think it's safe to give Texas to John Cornyn. Now we go to Kansas. I'm sorry, that's South Carolina. Let's go to Kansas. Okay, Kansas. There's been two polls recently, one of which is New York Times showing the Republican up. Therefore, I think it's probably safe to conclude that Kansas is safe. I don't think that was ever. That's just a fiction of the pollsters. Okay, now South Carolina. I actually did, let's see what Real Clear Politics says. South Carolina Real Clear Politics. Most polls give Graham a lead. One poll that doesn't is the Quinnipiac University. We do not need to worry about that one. That is off the charts, unreliable. And then you have CBS News YouGov. YouGov also, they will use terrible samples. Graham was never in danger. I understand that they spent a lot of money, but I did keep an average for that state. Okay, so I looked at the polls there briefly and really quickly concluded that there was just no logic behind them. The Quinnipiac polls are just, they have these crazy samples where they only give the Republicans +8, +6. That is not going to be what it looks like on the day of election today in South Carolina. So, South Carolina will go for the Republicans. So let's look at North Carolina. We have Cal Cunningham versus Tillis. Throughout the race, so looking at the charts here, it's been a pretty close race. Tillis has always been trailing by a bit in North Carolina. Looking through the polls, Emerson College, which has been suspect in the last couple of weeks, has Cunningham up 3. Rasmussen, Cunningham up 3. RMG, Cunningham up 7. And with the strong GOP model, Cunningham up 5. But again, Scott Rasmussen's strong GOP turnout model with RMG research, I do not buy. I don't think it's going to be accurate. Nevertheless, Cunningham is trailing by 5 in that one. Trailing by 3 with Harper. He's up by 2 with Trafalgar. True. This one could go either way. I think Tillis is not the best candidate for sure. With Cunningham's issues with the affair and everything, this one definitely could go toward Tillis. Survey USA had a poll showing Cunningham up 10 shortly after this scandal broke, but then it quickly went back to +5. I think Tillis is not going to be able to pull it out, but he could. But my call, I do not believe Tillis is going to be able to pull it out. I just don't think he's a good enough candidate. So we will give the Democrats that one, but just narrowly. It's going to be close either way. All right, next state, Iowa. Of late, Joni Ernst has gone up in this one. This has been back and forth. I've shown Joni Ernst up probably about half the time. But with the most recent poll coming from the Des Moines Register showing Ernst up 4 and Trump up 7, that's a very good sign for Joni Ernst. Insider Advantage has Ernst up 6. Emerson does show Greenfield up 3, but Emerson's kind of been running contrary to what they often do. But then we have Quinnipiac showing Ernst up 2. So I think just based on the polls, and then Monmouth had a tie. Look, with Monmouth showing a tie, you can probably give it to the Republican most of the time. I look at the internals of that Monmouth poll, and I think it really shows Ernst being up substantially. This was a close race. In the end, I don't think it's going to be that close. I think Joni Ernst takes it, probably end up taking it by 4 or 5 points. I've got her up by 2.4 points, but I do think she will win. Okay, let's go over to Montana. This has always been at least a tie in the polls, but I think it's going to break pretty clearly toward Daines on Election Day. So we'll give Montana to the Republicans. All right, let's head over to Minnesota. All right, in Minnesota, the Democrat is leading, according to the poll averages, as well as my average. Most recent poll had it close there with Survey USA, with Smith up 3. Most of the polling has not really shown it close. Again, I'm going to say that this one is going to go for Smith for the same reason that I said it's going to go for Biden, meaning the state of Minnesota. There's a tradition in the state that's hard to overturn. Could it overturn this time? Absolutely. Trump would be the guy to do it. Absolutely. I just think by a hair, the Democrats are going to pull out the presidential race, and I think they're going to pull out the Senate race probably by a little bit more than the presidential race. Minnesota, Democrat, somewhat close. Okay, over to Michigan. Okay, this has been a race that's been getting closer, and it got pretty close, but then the gain that James was making kind of subsided. It's a close race. It's 3 points. You look at my chart here. That suggests that perhaps James has a chance, but when you realize that toward the end, I decided I'm going to look at polling that's likely to be a little more favorable to James and see if he's really even in the ballpark. And we didn't get over that hurdle. I know Emerson hasn't been great of late, but it is a pollster that's traditionally a little fairer toward Republicans. RMG, yeah, same thing as Emerson. They're kind of both in the same category right now. But they have him down 9, and then by the strong GOP model, have him down 6. Terrence Group, which is a Republican pollster, they have him down 2. That's not good. Trafalgar Group, they do have James up 2. Average those results, you end up with a 3-point advantage for Peters. But I'm excluding all of the big media polls that show a huge lead for Peters. I just don't think James is going to be able to get over that hump in Michigan this time. So that'll go Democrat. Again, it should be close. I expect it to be close. All right, let's head down to Georgia. Now, I'm not even doing the averages for the race involving Loeffler and Collins. That's going to be a runoff settled later on, and Republicans will do well in that race. I'm just expecting that the Republicans are going to win that race. So we give them that runoff there, and it won't be close. So now I'm going to talk about the Purdue race. Okay, the polls there have been somewhat close, but Purdue has held a lead since July. As you can see, both in the pollster average and my average. Landmark shows Purdue up 2. Emerson shows Ossoff up 2, or up by 1. I don't know what category to put them in. They're getting the same result as Quinnipiac University, so you can put it that way. YouGov showed Purdue up by 5 back in September, and Monmouth showed Purdue up by 8. To be perfectly honest with you, when I saw these leads, I kind of wrote this race off as over. And I don't think the Democrats are going to pull it. They could pull a surprise in Georgia because we're always expecting they're going to be a big surge in turnout in Georgia for Democrats. But, I mean, they tried their best in 2018, and the best they could manage was a +7 turnout for Republicans. So, I mean, I just don't think we're there yet in Georgia. I think Purdue is going to win that state. Okay, and now we have... Okay, so for Alaska, you have some in the media talking about this race like it's a possible win for the Democrats. I don't see it. Again, that's one of those that I never really thought. I haven't even been tracking the polls because I just don't think there's a chance for the Democrats to win it in the Senate. All right, so now we're going to go to Arizona. Okay, this race has had Kelly leading throughout, and McSally has made a bit of a charge lately. You can see here on my chart, she is approaching Kelly. Not so much according to the pollsters. This one is a sleeper. She could win. If there is a surge, if the vote really looks as good as we think it's starting to look in Arizona, McSally could pull out a squeaker. But I can see a lot of ticket splitting, people voting for Trump and not voting for McSally. So there's that to consider. In the end, I don't think McSally's going to win it, but I wouldn't be shocked if she won it. She could potentially win it, but I don't think she's going to be able to pull out in the end. She's too unpopular with elements of the Republican base. It's going to hurt her in the end. So, oops. That one should go blue. There we go. But I do think the race is going to be pretty close. It's going to be closer than everybody thought. Okay, so there we have the Republicans at 50. If Donald Trump wins the White House, this is all they would need to control the Senate. Now we'll go look at Maine. Maine is the last shot for the Republicans to win the Senate if they don't win the White House. So, looking at the polls of late, Maine is not polled a lot. But there have been a few polls over the last couple of weeks that I think have been pretty clarifying. So you have Colby College did a poll. Their top line shows Gideon up by 4. But when you look at the internals, that looks quite a bit different. I'm just going to read it. The turnout should be even to a slight Republican advantage, and they gave the Democrats a +4. If you look here at the exit polls last time, the Democrats had a +1, and then in the midterm, it was an even. But I do think with Trump on the ballot, pulling some people out that otherwise wouldn't vote, it's going to at least be an even turnout between Republicans and Democrats. So, adjusting that turnout to even, and then looking at the internals, the data shows that Gideon won Democrats 86-9, Independents split 42-40, and Collins won Republicans 87-10. Now, when you look at the sample, they identified 894 registered voters, and they asked them, "Are you going to vote?" And those people said yes, and so they just took their word for it. That's called a self-identification of a likely voter. Not a good way to do it. Typically, that is basically just a registered voter poll. So I'm going to apply a registered voter filter to the independent column, which is where you're most likely to get unlikely voters saying they're going to vote. And they tend to lean Democrat by a small margin. So the independent vote goes from 42-40 for Gideon to 40-42.3 for Collins. If you allocate these voter ratios to the more likely turnout, which is right here, even Republican turnout with independents down a little bit. Independents are going to be down this cycle. You allocate that ratio, you end up getting Gideon with 46.9 and Collins 47.8. So we go from a 4-point lead to Gideon to a 1-point lead for Collins. You may say, there's a lot of assumptions there. Let's go to the next poll. Survey USA today, I keep doing that. Survey USA did a poll, has Gideon up by 1 point. This poll did not provide a voter turnout assumption, so I can just take their internal data, which they did provide, and apply it to the voter turnout that I think is most likely. Now, if you look at this, Gideon is only getting 81% of the Democrat vote. That's low. And Collins is getting 13%. Then you have independents splitting again, and you have Collins getting almost 90% of her vote, 88, and Gideon only getting 8% of the Republican vote. Now, somehow, Survey USA ends up concluding that that means Gideon's up a point. They probably have a D +4 or something like that turnout. I think it's going to be an even turnout. When you assume an even turnout, boom, Collins shoots out to the lead. That's a 5-point lead based on their internals. Okay, but you're saying these are a lot of assumptions. Let's go to the next poll. Emerson College, they show Gideon up 2. But they assume a 9-point turnout advantage for Democrats. Why would they assume that? That's not going to be the turnout. If you adjust it to what I think it's going to be, now you have to infer the ratios, but we're on strong ground there because Gideon had a 2-point lead with a 9-point partisan advantage, suggesting Collins gained 7 points across party, meaning that more Democrats voted for Collins than Republicans voted for Gideon, and she likely won more independents, meaning Collins. I allocated ratios based similar to the Survey USA poll and made it work pretty well. Made it fit those numbers nicely. After you apply the ratios, what do you get? You get another result very similar to the Survey USA adjustment, which is 45-49.4 for Collins. Average these together, you get a 3.4% lead for Collins. So basically, now this in Maine, they have something called ranked choice voting, which means that a third party, someone voting for a third party, they can pick a second candidate. and that will their vote will apply to that person as well. That is going to be a little bit of a problem for Collins, but I think 3.5 points is enough to offset that problem with the ranked choice voting. So I think Collins is going to squeak it out in Maine on the basis of even turnout, stronger than expected turnout for Republicans, which we're seeing, I think we're going to likely see all across the country. If she doesn't manage to win it, it might be 50-50, but I think there's a very good shot that either Collins, Cunningham, or McSally are going to win, at least one of those three. And that being the case, that should be enough. Well, first of all, let me go ahead and give Maine to Collins. That's 51-49. That gives Republicans control. But as I was saying, even if Collins loses, let's go to my map. Even if Collins loses here, there's a good chance that one of these other two, either Tillis or McSally, can win. So I think the odds of Republicans holding on to the Senate are definitely better than even. I'd say 70-30. I mean, I feel that good about one of those three being able to win it. So in the end, it looks like the Republicans will hold the Senate. I'm projecting a 51-49 count in the end. If you like this video, please like, subscribe, and share.